Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. I think one thing people tend to forget about The Office, especially after it ran for almost a decade and then became the most watched show on Netflix for years, is that when it started, it really wasn't a hit at all. The buzz going into the show from those who loved the British version wasn't positive, with many expecting it to be yet another bad American version of a beloved UK original. And for the average network TV viewer in 2005, its documentary style was weird and potentially off-putting. It took a few years for that form to really come to dominate the sitcom. The pilot premiered well, but ratings soon dropped off a cliff, with the season finale Hot Girl scoring an all-time series low of 4.8 million viewers. Now that doesn't sound too bad in today's cord-cutting TV landscape, but back then, it was pretty rough. To put that in context, 2.5 Men averaged over 15 million viewers that year. So the future of The Office was not looking super promising. It had one big saving grace though, iTunes. The show had premiered the same year that the massive music service had started selling TV episodes. And in that arena, The Office Season 1 did shockingly well, with the show consistently duking it out for the top spot on the best-selling TV episodes list, along with ABC's Lost. Showrunner Greg Daniels has admitted that it was this iTunes success, and Steve Carell starring in 40-Year-Old Virgin, that got the show picked up for a full season 2. And without it, the show probably wouldn't have gone on to be one of the biggest TV success stories of the 2000s. So with all that context in mind, Season 2's premiere, The Dundies, stands not only as a great episode of The Office, but also probably the single most important episode in the show's history. If Season 1 was largely a failure for NBC, with iTunes being the one big silver lining, The Dundies is the episode that established it as an out-and-out hit, scoring 9 million viewers. But the main reason I wanted to talk about this episode isn't because of old Nielsen ratings, it's really a lot more than that. The Dundies is, I think, the first episode where the American Office truly feels comfortable in its own skin. Where Season 1 struggled to step out of the shadow of its more downbeat UK counterpart, this episode shows that the writers and actors were really able to identify what was working and what wasn't, and adjust accordingly. I think this is especially true of the main character of the show himself, Michael Scott. The Dundies is where Michael really came into his own as a character. Don't get me wrong, Steve Carell had some great moments in Season 1, but the character himself wasn't exactly fully formed, coming across more like the UK show's David Brent than who he would eventually become. Season 2 sees Michael styled completely differently, hewing closer to Steve Carell's haircut in 40-Year-Old Virgin, and with a lot less pale makeup. More importantly though, how they wrote the character changed pretty significantly. The Dundies really brings to the forefront one of Michael's most defining character traits, his desperate need to feel included and like part of a family. In the first season, Michael could be pretty cruel for cruelty's sake, like when he fired Pam as a totally deadpan joke. I think that shifts a bit here. Of course, he's still embarrassing and insensitive, but now he's trying so much harder to be liked and respected by his employees. It softens his edges a bit, while playing directly to Steve Carell's strengths. In The Dundies, Michael hosts an award show at the local Chili's. It feels kinda weird to praise a piece of TV product placement, but as far as those go, I think this one is actually pretty perfect. For better or worse, Chili's does seem like the exact kind of place to host an awkward office dinner. And I love the detail that Michael couldn't even get corporate to pay for drinks, which just makes the whole forced evening even more depressing. Oscar memorably describes the Dundies as like attending a kid's birthday party as an adult. You just go because you're supposed to, and the kid seems to be having a good time. But for Michael, the stakes have never been higher, as he tries as hard as he can to come off as a hilarious, cool party MC. I think other episodes would eventually go on to use Carell even better than here, but at this point in the show, I think this was easily Michael Scott's best episode. It's always great when the character grabs the spotlight and refuses to give it up, until eventually even he can't deny how bad he is at this. But everyone actually feeling bad for him and encouraging him to continue is also kind of a shift in how the show had portrayed him in the past. He's no longer a thoughtless monster. He's a dopey guy who mostly means well and just doesn't understand how embarrassing he can be. And that's a characterization that works a lot better for the actor, who's just giving such a drastically different performance from Ricky Gervais's David Brent. But Michael isn't the only one who gets to shine here. This is also a pretty memorable episode for Jenna Fischer as Pam. I really like the backstory that Michael gives Pam and Roy an award for longest engagement every single year, something that's obviously only more depressing to her as time goes on. But where season 1 also had Pam just sit in sad, stunned silence, here she actually gets some material to play as she has a few too many drinks and ends up falling down in Chili's. And it's actually a really nice, humanizing moment for Michael when he gives her the Whitest Sneaker award instead. I think the Pam storyline manages to pull off what the early years of The Office often did at its best, balancing really funny sitcom jokes with a palpable sense of sadness. But it's not all bleak, as Fisher gets some really funny moments here. I think her Sneaker Award victory speech about feeling God in this Chili's tonight is maybe one of her most funny scenes in the entire series. One kind of weird thing to note though is that originally Pam's drinking was supposed to end with her throwing up on the floor of Chili's. But that ended up not being filmed because the Chili's representatives on set were not super thrilled with the idea. Still, the restaurant franchise was unhappy with the episode, and it was only when they added in the scene of the Chili's employee explaining that they took her drink stealing very seriously and she's now banned from the entire chain that they were okay with airing it. Which honestly surprised me because I thought that actor's deadpan line read was so good that it didn't really come off as a product placement note to me. Anyway, Dwight also gets a B-plot here, and it's the kind of thing the show would enjoy going back to over and over again. Dwight investigating a completely harmless crime. In this case, who carved something mean about Michael into the bathroom wall? Eventually, I think this kind of storyline would get old as Dwight slid farther and farther into cartoonishness, but it works pretty well here. And the way it manages to tie into Pam's plot works really well to bring the whole episode together. It's hard to just highlight these 3 characters though, because this is an episode where the whole cast really gets a chance to shine. From Angela refusing to accept the Tight Ass Award, to one of my favorite scenes in the whole episode, Ryan's interview where he's depressed about even being asked where he'll keep his Hottest in the Office award. In the end, I wouldn't claim that the Dundies was like the best episode of the show ever, or maybe even the best of season 2, but I think it ends up maybe being the most important episode of the show as a whole. It was this episode that finally established the tone of the American Office going forward, and cemented the sitcom as a huge hit. Season 1 had its moments, for sure, but I think we have the Dundies to thank for the show really coming into its own creatively. I love it when a show with potential is able to go back into the writer's room for a new season and course correct what didn't work the previous year and write to their talent's strengths. It's one of the things that makes television such a unique medium, as you're basically watching these writers and actors really find their characters over time, something that I actually find pretty fascinating to watch. The Office is a great example of that, and it's one of the main reasons I still think about this show so much to this day. So, if you're looking for a great gift for the holidays, or honestly just want a fun game to play over the winter break, I cannot recommend Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy enough. This is a single-player, story-driven action-adventure game developed by Eidos Montreal, and I've really been loving the hours I've spent with it. I expected the combat to be great, and it is, but what's really impressed me is just how fleshed out the writing and performances are. Just that sheer amount of dialogue and character it manages to pack into every interaction. It's out now for PS4, PS5, Xbox consoles, PC, and Switch, so basically just like all the platforms. I've been having an amazing time with this game, but you don't even have to take it from me because it has 94% positive reviews on Steam. It's a sure bet for that holiday gift, and a perfect option if you're looking for a game that's got tense combat that also manages to make you laugh, cry, and just about everything in between. Guardians of the Galaxy could really not be easier to recommend.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.